I don't have any fighters fighting this week, I don't have any supports, and I don't have any prayer requests. But I do have a number of birthdays, so I want to wish a very happy birthday to all the following people and hope that they eat lots and lots of cake. Perhaps I might eat cake for them, I don't know. There are as follows: Zach George, AJ Codros, Jamie Ridgway, Dustin Rhodes, Ryan Jimmo, Diego Noons, my friend Prima Dawn from the forum, and a work colleague of mine called Rob. Do you know, it's been 2 weeks now since the conclusion of the fall holiday for 2013. And usually, you'll probably know if you watch my vlogs, that it takes me about 2 weeks to recover from a 2-week holiday. Surprisingly, that hasn't been the case this time. And I might have mentioned that last week, that I had an extraordinary week filled with lots and lots of stuff, and I actually felt very happy and very okay. And this feeling has continued this week. It's funny for a second reason as well, and that's because at the moment, you know, we're going into November, the weather's beginning to turn quite cold, and it gets dark, you know, before I leave for work and after I come home. Before I leave here for work and before I leave work to come back, which means it's dark all the time. And for somebody like me who does get affected by the sort of seasonal depression, particularly October, November, not so much January, February, it has to be said, I have passed almost unscathed. I don't know what I've done. I don't know whether it was the fact that I took my fall holiday slightly later, and so I was, you know, able to have time off when it was during a dark period, but actually get more light than usual, or whether it's because the weather has been not so bad up until now, especially, you know, in terms of being cold. It's been a bit windy and wet, but it's not been cold. I don't know. But I am in a bizarre situation where I am actually smiling and laughing quite a lot, and feeling very, very happy and very, very good. I think there may be two reasons, two deep reasons for this that I haven't just mentioned. One of them could be because I have a feeling that my outlook has shifted somewhat. And I did say this a couple of weeks ago, back in Whitby. You know, people tend to either live in the past or the future. Somebody who lives in the past keeps great records, puts great sort of faith in remembering, you know, things that happen each year, sort of like commemorating events, and they draw on their past experiences to help them with their future. It's their belief that to progress they have to learn from what they've experienced. Future people are sort of quite the opposite. They tend to make long-term plans for the future. They tend to look forward to what's going to happen. They usually forget what's happened, that's not important, and their whole way of life is centred around what they are going to become, the experience that they are going to experience, and how basically the present and their working towards a goal, you know, equates to themselves. So they draw on the future for inspiration, and that's what they're looking to. There are people who live in the present. They tend to be extremely selfish people. They have no thought about what's just happened. They have very little in terms of planning for the future. They live moment by moment, day by day. The important things in life to them are what they are experiencing at that moment. Now, you'll also know that most people are sort of a blend of all three, but they will hinge on one or the other, and usually it's a past or a future. And that's because we basically need to operate on a system that goes beyond just the present. That means that actually quite often we forget the present completely. And one of the things that I've learned, particularly being quite a past-dwelling person, is that, for example, I remember we went to the fireworks display not so long ago. I watched the fireworks display through the view screen of my camera. I didn't actually watch the fireworks display itself. That is because I wanted to make a record and keep a record of it and upload it, blah, 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 blah. But the point was that I didn't live in that moment. My whole outlook for that was to collect it for later. And in some way, in some small way, I missed the actual firework display. I wasn't looking in the sky. I was looking through the view screen of my camera, which I can look time and time and time and time again, and anybody can look time and time again on my channel. But that doesn't mean that they were there. And one has to ask, was I there any more than anybody watching that? And I think in the last 2 or 3 weeks, what I have come to enjoy is a little bit of present tense. It's massively important to plan for the future. It's absolutely essential. It's stupid not to. Let's have some common sense. I also think that I am never going to be somebody who doesn't dwell in the past, basically. It's always going to be important to me to keep records, to be able to look back. And I do think, personally, that we emerge, from what we have experienced, not that we arrive because of the goals that we make. That's just my own personal view. However, that, as I said, can mean that you miss out on the present, and sometimes the present can give you a lot of joy. Being with your family, being with your friends, experiencing things without thinking about its relative position to you, just experiencing it. And one of the ways that I think I've done that is, for the past month and a half now, I have actually spent a lot more time just reading. I've spent a lot more time not doing quite as much as I usually do, which might revolve around, the past or the future. That's given me chance, I think, when I stop reading, to value a little bit more the actual time, what I'm doing. If this doesn't make much sense to you, don't worry. But I am just saying that I think that, we ought to value what happens when it happens, because that, not because that might be the last time, not because it might be an interesting thing that you can look back on, but simply because that's part of life as well. There is another possibility, and that is that I have come to recognise what I call placebo gatherings. If you feel strongly about the way things should be in any situation, and I think that people generally should, then I'm all of the mind that one should voice their opinions, complain, in other words. But I also think that it's frightfully important that one follow that up with actually doing something about it. The reason that places like Britain will not have an Arab Spring, cannot have an Arab Spring, is because our government lets us protest. By doing that, it does release a little bit of tension. It acts as a cathartic vent. We are not quite so angry after we come home from a march, perhaps, than before we went out. The key point to remember is that they don't have to listen. And the trick of this is that it's a placebo gathering. It doesn't actually solve anything, and they bloody know it. What is the how can you change things? I am beginning to think that there are only two real ways that you can change things. You either persuade people, and you do that in person or in writing. I think that does a lot more, publicising that does a lot more than standing in the cold outside a nuclear base or something like that. And the other thing you do is you try and you get involved. Now, be careful with that one. Be very careful with that one, because in order to change these things, you have to be dedicated 100%. And I think in order to do that, it has to be something that you are basically going to commit your life towards. You cannot take on all concerns and change them. And you must notice when you encounter placebo gatherings, because they are at all levels as well. And, I am all for persevering for something, for some change, if it's something that you are passionate about and going to dedicate your life to. If you're not, and you've put a little bit of effort into trying to change things, and nothing has happened because you have found yourself in a placebo gathering, then it can do you more harm than good to stay in that gathering, to be totally honest. Because if you're not going to dedicate your life to it, what you end up doing is frustrating yourself. You frustrate yourself by making it matter, and then seeing and knowing that it's not going to make a difference, whatever you say, and then you get angry. And anger in your life is not good. Not that sort of anger. It's not righteous anger at all. It's a complete waste of time if you know you cannot logically do anything about it. So give it up, because if you do, like I have done, you will feel so much better.